Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the JTM Community Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Melvin. If you're watching this, you know who our guest today is, a frequent flyer and the person that I often consider our co-host. If you are listening to this, we'll get to that in just a moment. Of course, if you want to touch base with me for advancement advising, you can do so at j-tm.community. If you want podcast specific info, just do /podcast. It'll take you right where you want to be. If you want to be a part of the community, so every Monday a new episode goes live, and every Monday a new poll goes live. That poll is dictated by you all from the stories that you give and share. The ideas that you provide becomes a voting poll, and then you all dictate what a future episode will be. The easy thing you can do to become part of that community is to join our Facebook group. Again, there's info every day, Monday through Friday. Monday is the podcasty kind of stuff, and then Tuesday through Friday is typical inspiration, motivation, humor, and human connection comes through there. Without further ado, we are joined by Mr. Will Squires for this 4-part mini-series. We are going to kick it off with creating your own carrots. Part 2 will be Humpty Dumpty Moments, when to know when to stop putting or trying to put things back together. 3 is relaxing versus neglect. And 4, vulnerabilities. Before we kick off a topic, Will, go ahead and introduce yourself.
For those of you who have not met me, I am Will Squires. I am teacher out here in Northern Nevada. I'm also a husband, a recovering athlete, and not recovering in the terms of I'm not doing athletics anymore. I'm recovering because of a knee surgery. Mm-hmm.
So part 2, Humpty Dumpty Moments, when to know when to stop trying to put things back together. So what in the world does that mean to you in general?
Well, I mean, I can't say everybody anymore because I've had students that have told me they've never heard of Humpty Dumpty. So,
that's sad.
Yeah, so I guess we have to go over with it.
It's not a great story, though. It's kind of a Debbie Downer.
It is kind of a Debbie Downer. You know, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Humpty Dumpty, you know,
all the king's horses and all the king's men. Yeah, put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Couldn't put him back together again, so he pretty much died falling off the wall, and you know, there goes Humpty Dumpty. But the thing that hits me the most when you talk about Humpty Dumpty moments, it always for some reason goes back to relationships for me. When you first said Humpty Dumpty moments, the first thing that clicked into my head was relationships that are, and I hate using the word toxic because it's used on like so many different things now, but just relationships that are no longer necessary. Relationships that have run their course, relationships that have
negative value.
Maybe not just negative value, but it's stagnant. Like it might not be negative, but it's just, there's nothing, you're not getting it, nothing. The person who you're in the relationship with isn't getting anything out of it either. So why keep it going? Not negative or positive, just nothing. You keep trying to go through it, and everybody uses the thought of, well, the light bulb took 1,000 times to be created and before it was useful. Yes, but each time it was changed up and done differently. It wasn't done the same time every way every single time.
Einstein definition of insanity.
Yeah, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. But so when I look at that, it's relationship, and then it's just things in life that are not necessary anymore. But yeah, the first thought that I got was back to relationships. So
I think that is my general thought. Also tends to be people related, but it goes in a slightly altered direction in the sense of sinking ships. So if all things are ships and you're taking on water, You can grab a pail and start,
bailing it over. Yeah.
Or you can try and plug the hole, or both. Right now,
well, you can't do both.
well, you can.
Yeah. I don't know when
you can't do either one particularly well at the same time, but you can try to do both.
Yeah, so, if you focus your attention on one thing, then the other one goes unfocused, but then if you give half and half, then you're not putting your full attention into either one, so it kind of just looks like, oh, here we go.
So for me, I think the idea of the Humpty Dumpty moments and the moment when you know when to stop trying is I use the idea of sinking ships and pair it with relationships. So your ship's taking on water, right? You plug the hole, you board it up, and you're trying to bail the water out that was left in, right? You're doing that. But the person has a sledgehammer and they're just pounding the wall, right? Putting another hole. Or as you are bailing water over the edge, right? They have a bucket on a rope pulling water back up and putting it in the boat. So it's all about intention and action. So if you are doing a thing and the other person, the situation, the whatever, is repeatedly acting against your interest, that's immediately when you know. If that's a friendship, if that is a romantic relationship, if that's a job, if that's a hobby, if that is a house, right? And it could be a house. You could be, let's say you have a car and tire blows, need a new tire. Brake pad goes bad. Trans goes. Engine's messing up. You have an oil leak, right? There's 350,000 miles on this vehicle. And this is a thing that most of us had to make a decision at some point of at what
do we
point
cut the losses?
Do we stop putting money into this thing, right? Consider it a loss and move on.
Yeah.
We don't
we've done so much to do it.
Yep. We don't like to think that kind of way towards a person, but we're no different.
Yeah, no, it's really not different, because you have to, like you said, that person keeps pulling up water as you're trying to bail it out. That person's got leaks, that you've tried to help fix, but you can't be that for somebody. In the last episode we talked about literally people, having to focus on themselves before. In past episodes we've said, you have to put your mask on before you can put the mask on for the children that you're with, if there's ever a need in airplanes where the
turbulence,
little things come down, little masks come down. And so you can't care for others if you don't take care of yourself first. And I think that's where I've gotten a lot better at that in the last, decade or so. Just because of the fact that there's, like, everything that you see, like, there's just some people, especially with social media lately, like they just get on and dump everything, and it's always a problem. There's nothing good, and they never post anything fun. They never post anything fantastic or happy, or call you and say, "Hey, this just happened for me." They always call you when there's something that they need. I know some people in southern Utah that they only call their parental figure on their birthdays or holidays when they think they're going to get something. And it's really sad to see that, because this parental figure has put so much time and effort into them, but because of all this stuff that's going on around them, and how the influences that they've had from other people outside of the good influences has just weakened their system and made them just such weird people. That's the only time, or when when their kids need something, they'll say, "Oh, hey, well, it's their birthday. What are you sending us?" It's like, no, that's not what they're there for. They're not there to be your safety blanket or just to get presents from.
That's a family member with a sledgehammer smacking balls into the ship right there.
Yeah, and it's taken this person that I love to death. I love the person to whom this is happening. They try so hard, and they just want to be a good parent. But everything else, is just working against them. And it's like, okay, well, they're old enough now. Your kids are now, just around my age, if not a little bit younger. They're on their own. Like, if they're going to keep doing this, but you never want to say that about kids. Well, they're your kids. You should never give up on them.
Well, it's not about giving up.
It's about you've tried your hardest to make sure that they're a good person, and it hasn't worked. So
I think the catch-22 there is the mindset that we've created in our culture. Actually, just had this conversation yesterday for this same exact reason. Is somebody was struggling creating a sense of accountability within their own family. And throughout the conversation, they began to understand and concluded that by continuing to give them what they believed prior was support, they were just enabling the bad things to continue, versus giving that person the opportunity for accountability, right? By not enabling that. And that's where the growth happens. It doesn't happen through the enabling. It happens through the accountability.
It does not happen through the accountability, but that is one thing that is no longer seen a lot in our world.
People don't like it. It's uncomfortable.
People. And whenever you try to hold somebody accountable, you get in trouble.
Yeah,
I see it every day at school.
Yep.
Parents want their kids to be these amazing people, but they don't want to do any of the work at home, and then expect the schools to do it. And then when the school tries to do it and hold them accountable to standards, well, you can't do that to my kid. My kid's perfect. Number one, no, nobody is.
Sure. Yep.
Number two, if you're just going to drop them off to us and say, hey, teach them, then, we're going to, if you turn something in late, you get marked down. Well, you can't mark my child down. They had softball last night, or they had football last night. That's not my problem. I'm sorry. So I will mark them down 10% for each day it's late.
Which unfortunately teaches the child a very, very poor lesson that recreation has more value than, in this case, education.
Yep. And it's a totally different topic for a totally different time. I think all sports need to be privatized. But anyway, that's me. But that is one of the things, is like, nobody wants to have that, because we don't want to hurt people. We don't want to hurt their feelings. We don't want to. If that hurts their feelings of keeping somebody accountable and making sure that things are going to be working at the best of their ability, then tough. If it's at a job, well, I was a day late on something. Okay, well, you lose 10% of the acquisition if we get the account. Even though if you were late and they still decide to go with us, you're losing 10% of the account, like the money that's generated because you were late. Don't be late next time. Nothing that serious, but like just something to keep them. But every time we do now in this day and age, we get in trouble. And it's not just teachers, it's everybody.
I feel like the pendulum is beginning to swing in the other direction. My fear is that it swings too far. But we've definitely come a long way, and I don't mean that in a good sense, but in the lack of common sense. And that's kind of all over the place.
Yeah. The common sense is...
Yeah. In the moment that we have created that truth is subjective, which is not inherently true. That's not an honest thing. But we've created a culture that pushes the belief that is accurate, right? As soon as that happened, we were going to be in for a world of hurt, because truth is inherently an objective thing. You might not know it, but just because you don't know it doesn't mean that the thing is or isn't true.
Yeah, it does.
The phrase "my truth" is a thing that chaps my ass, because there is the truth. Like there is the absolute truth.
There is so every time
your perspective, which is valuable.
Yes.
There's a different person's perspective, but there is truth.
Yes, and this is what I try to tell my students every day when there's a problem at school, when they're having a problem with a friend, or when they're having a problem with other people, or when they're just having a problem with themselves, and they tell a story and they go, "Well, this is how it was to me." And I said, "Good. So what I'm going to do is I've got your story, your viewpoint. I'm going to get the other person's viewpoint, and then somewhere in the middle is probably where it's going to be true." So we're going to get all the facts first before we just start saying, "Okay, you're going to detention, you're doing this, you're doing this." We're going to get all the facts first.
Sure. The unfortunate thing is you could do all of that and still not come to the conclusion of what the actual truth was.
Absolutely, because we can only use what we are able to see
based on the information we're able to collect, for sure. Even if I use something as abstract as faith, right? So regardless of what you believe or don't, ultimately there is a truth.
Yeah. Do we know what it is? No. There are. I mean, being a history teacher, there were so many different civilizations with so many different beliefs, so many different thought processes. So many different gods that they prayed to, so many different entities. But you believe in something. Great, believe in something. But nobody will know the absolute truth. A lot of people say, yes, there is one truth. And great, that is awesome. But we will not know. I don't know ever.
Hopefully we will at some point.
Yeah, but you know what?
I want to know.
But that's what the human race does, is we want to know everything.
I mean, that's the very premise of faith, right? It's believing in a thing that is otherwise not known. Because if you actually know it, it's not faith. If you know a thing, it's stuff that you can't see.
Yeah, you can see the actions of the people or of the entity, but you don't absolutely know it. And this is me growing up. Like, I have my beliefs, and I'm not going to say whether somebody else's are right or wrong. I'm just going to say, we'll find out when we find out.
Sure. Bringing this back and going, so we've talked now about the idea of faith, about education, about friends, I believe you had referenced.
Yeah, relationships, yes.
What is becoming clear kind of goes back to, in part, what we were talking about in part one, creating your own carrots. At the end, when we were talking about you and Rachel and the idea of threshold, when we were talking about that idea of the unhealthy dad and the children, and the idea of threshold, when we were talking about addiction and interventions and the idea of threshold, we've unknowingly continued that conversation with the idea of Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah.
So it's, when do you know when to stop trying to put the pieces back together again? Just like your friend who is a parent to adult children in Utah, I think you said Utah.
Yeah.
Is that when a certain threshold is met, when your ship has taken on enough water where you deem it no longer acceptable, at that point is when people take action and stop trying to put the pieces back together. When we stop trying to bail that ship out, when we stop investing in the car that is broken down with the transmission taking a shit, the engine taking a shit, the flat tire, the brake pad's gone, right? It's with the oil leak.
Yeah.
So you might have replaced 6 things on it, but it's the 7th thing that is, you took on a little too much water and now you stop.
Yeah. What's your level, right?
Yep. People's threshold is 1 bucket.
Yeah.
Other people's threshold is, I have to have half the ocean in my ship before
I can't take your crap anymore, and it's like, I just did one thing. Yeah, I can't take that. Like, that's too much negativity and stuff in my life. Goodbye, out, And it is very personal when it comes to, how much somebody's willing to take.
Mhm.
For me, over the years, it's been a whole hell of a lot. For my mother, I can tell you it's a whole hell of a lot. Like, she is one of the people that it takes a lot to make her not want to try for you anymore.
I'm going to
And
pick on the both of you. Is
I
for
learned it from her. So
remarkably smart and educated people. In some ways, you're slow learners.
well, we are in that case. We definitely are, because we always want to help. We always want to save. We always want to, like.
Your
That's
heart
just
trumps your mind.
a lot of times it does, and like I said, I've been getting a lot better at it in the last 10-ish, 15 years, maybe. But
I'd say noticeably different in the last 6 months.
yeah, noticeably different. A lot more recently, because I've just started getting more fed up with stuff. It's just,
Your fuck it button's broken.
yeah, do not. This is one of the ones that you just do not replace. Do not replace. Do not replace. It's just over. I go back to a quote from, and then people are going to rip me for this one, but Pride and Prejudice. Mr. Darcy goes, "My good graces once lost are lost forever," and I think that's incredibly profound from back in that day, because they just, what, too much crap is going on. You have lost. You have not shown that you're a good person. You've not shown that you're a good, entity to work for. You've shown that you're not a good government to follow. You've shown all these different things about, like, what your character is. I'm just done. Then there's no way that you can repair that.
I think it's the parallel of something that you said earlier. I can't remember if it was when we were talking about this specifically. I think it was when we were talking about part one, creating your own carrots. When you said you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
In this case, I think what we're highlighting is you can't unknow what you do know. So once a damage is done, you can do work to try and mend or repair that, but you can't ever unknow it.
Yeah. One of the scenarios that I use for my students is, there was a story of 10-ish some odd years ago that I listened to, that was a son who was getting in trouble every day at school for being mean to kids. And so his dad said, "Okay, go, every day that you do something wrong, you're going to nail a nail into that board over there. And when you stop doing that, when you have a consistent day that you're not doing that, we'll celebrate that." So kid comes, tons of nails on the board, and then all of a sudden he comes back and goes, "Dad, I don't have any nails on the board. It's been a week. I haven't had any nails on the board." And he goes, "Okay, so now for every day that you don't have a nail that you're putting into the board, take one out." And then he shows the kid, once all the nails are out, he shows all the holes that are left in the board, because that's what you've done to other people. That's the impact that you've had on their lives, and you can't repair that always. You can't fill that back in. Yeah, there's wood repair, there's wood glue, there's whatever, but you can't repair all the damage that you've done to people. And you and I know this from just being human. We've hurt people.
Oh, sure.
We've hurt people knowingly, and we've hurt people unknowingly, but we cannot always repair that, and sometimes we don't. They don't deserve us doing that either. Like, we don't deserve that chance because of what we did, or what, if they feel like we've gone too far or overdone our welcome. Like, it just comes down to that person again. What's your level of tolerance? What's their level of tolerance? How much are you willing to put up with? And then just dump the relationship, or dump the job if you're not feeling respected or, taken care of. I don't know. It's hard, and it comes back to personal preference and personal tolerance, but there has got to be a point in life where you just say, "No, I've taken enough junk, enough crap. I can't do this anymore for myself. And it has to be, and it sounds selfish, but it has to be for you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to say, I cannot do this anymore because I need to focus on myself. And people are like, well, you're selfish. Okay, well, then I'm selfish. Then don't be around me.
Sure.
You know, and if that's the kind of people that, if just because you're trying to take care of your own mental and physical health and they're calling you selfish for that, then they don't deserve to be in your life.
It kind of triggered the thought of the expression, those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter.
Yeah, totally. I remember hearing that before, but it didn't come into my head.
Before we jump into the next part, what is the most recent Humpty Dumpty moment that you've had? So a moment where you had to get to a point where a threshold was met, where you had to make the decision to not put the pieces back together. And it could be as superficial or as deep as your mind goes.
Well, so for me right now, it's an almost Humpty Dumpty moment.
Okay.
So for the last couple of years, I've been looking at, I haven't been feeling and it's probably because of all the different things going on with education right now. I'm not happy with the system. I'm not happy with what they're asking us to do. And it's not my administrators. It's not my school administrators. The last 3 that I've had, and it's not anything else than that. It's the parent and societal expectations, and then also those things that are coming down from the school board that they're asking. Let me rephrase. That they're volunteering us to do. And so the last couple of years, I've just been like, am I done? Am I done with teaching? And this year, since we're doing some changes at the school, my administrator's been super cool with allowing me to follow my work and wanting to do just one subject. And then they asked if I could do a leadership class as well. So that's kind of cool that I get to add that on. But I get to focus just mainly on social studies, history, teaching kids about the history of our world and how not to make the same mistakes that the past civilizations have done. But I've kind of given myself a time limit on it, as seeing how this year, maybe the next 2 years go just under this new system that I have. And if it doesn't get any better, and if the bureaucratic bullcrap that keeps coming down from way up above in our broken education system keeps happening, I'm just going to jump out. And, that's going to be my time where my raft needs to be ready to go. And I'm not going to float on a door in the middle of the North Atlantic. So sure. I'm not letting it drop me off and say I'll never let go. So
it really sounds like you're kind of in a moment where you are trying to do the work to see if the system and those within it grab a pail and start bailing, or they're grabbing a sledgehammer and continuing to poke holes. And if the time were to come, then what I hear you saying is you'll have to abandon ship.
Yeah, and you know what? Since I'm not the captain of the ship, I'm the captain of my own ship, and I have to take care of myself first. So if
what is that?
Captain?
Oh, captain, my captain.
Oh, don't get me started on Walt Whitman.
Let's not do that.
I will go. I've done poetry on this podcast before. I will go at it again.
So just as a reference, I can't recall where that's from.
It's from Captain, my captain.
Wasn't it?
It's Dead Poet Society, but it's the poem by Walt Whitman. It's actually a reference to Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War.
Oh, okay.
So that when you actually break it down, it's him leading the country through, even though he's dead now, the work that he's done continues because of what he put into place.
Yeah, the legacy.
So it's a cool little poem that the kids just go. It's about a ship that's coming back into port after everything's done, and I'm like, is it though?
Is it though?
So poetry is beautiful, because there could always be double meanings to it.
Poetry is very subjective. It's because your brain will make it what you need it to be in the moment. And oftentimes what the author or the poet's intention is never
different.
known to the audience.
Yeah, and that's where you're corrected. In poetry is subjective to the interpreter.
Yes. Yep.
Not to the author, because the author knows exactly what it's meant for.
Yep.
The interpreter, the one who is interpreting the actual poem, is the one who, and it's the same thing, is like, it's your truth. Okay, great. That's your truth. You can have a poem that has nothing to do with exactly what the author meant it to be, but it means something to you. Good, and go for you.
And sometimes the author, their intent is to be ambiguous, so it is up to the interpreter. And kind of like abstract art is similar in such a way. Love it. Thank you so much, Will, for joining me this morning and taking a couple hours in a mild level of discomfort as we talked about various things. Of course, go ahead.
I'm just going to say before you do your sign off real quickly, I appreciate the fact that that you know it's going to be a little uncomfortable, and that you push me to that point, because if we don't challenge each other, then what's this all about?
Yep.
So,
in the words of a wise man, discern, trust, communicate. And
it's true.
I did just that.
You did.
I discerned. I trust you profoundly. Hence the communication.
So there you go. But thank you for allowing me to be part of this process. It's a fun little trip. So
it's always a joy.
Yeah.
Even the discomfort is enjoyable, because I think you and I are similar, that those are the moments of our greatest growth, is when we feel uncomfortable, whether that's physically, emotionally, physically.
Yep, it is.
Again, Will, thank you for joining me for our conversations this morning. If you are tuning in, you can check out this 4-part. So part 1 was creating your own carrots. Part 2 were Humpty Dumpty moments, when to know when to stop trying to put things back together. Part 3, relaxing versus neglect. And then part 4 was on vulnerabilities. Of course, if you want to touch base with me for advancement advising, you can do so at j-tm.community. If all you want is podcast-specific stuff, you can just add /podcast to that. It'll take you right to where you want to be. If you want to check out some local or national resources, you can also find that on the website. Top right-hand side of the website is also all of our social medias. Easiest thing you can do to join the community for a little bit of inspiration, motivation, human connection, or humor at times. Usually every Monday, as part of the new post for the poll that you all dictate and create, I try to kick it off with a joke, because there's no better way, in my opinion, to start off the week than with a little bit of humor, whether that's dark, whether that's corny, whether that's cheesy, whether it's a dad-style joke.
The one this week was rather good, by the way.
I don't even remember what this week's was. So if you want to join that community, you can find that through the social media. Again, every Monday is a new episode, as well as a new poll. And then Tuesday through Friday is a little bit of inspiration, motivation, human connection. Sometimes that's in a video. Sometimes that's like an inspirational quote. And inspiration to some, probably annoying to others. But it's there for your particular consumption. Without further ado, again, thank you, Will, and thank you for anyone who has tuned in and for being part of a community where you belong.